Hello everyone, I'm Mandy Lockley and welcome to On Purpose Astrology. Today I'm going to be talking about the new moon in Sagittarius, but I can't really talk about that until we've really addressed the big thing that's happened this week, which is Pluto has moved into the sign of Aquarius. It's going to be there for 20 years. It's huge. Pluto, as we know, is a slow-moving planet, so it's going to be 20 years in Aquarius. It's already dipped in and out, as we've been saying, a long goodbye to Pluto in Capricorn. So what does this mean? Well, I'm sure a lot of you know exactly what it means. You've watched, you know astrology, you've watched a lot of videos. But so just to give you some of the themes so we can kind of mull over it, and we'll be talking about it a lot more as the months and years go by. But where Capricorn, Pluto and Capricorn was about top-down power, the people at the top. Pluto in Aquarius focuses the power of the people, the bottom up, grassroots, community level, and how we organize ourselves. It's an air sign. Air signs are civilized. One of the key words for the air signs, they are civilized. So who are we as a human civilization? What is our civilization? How do we organize ourselves in a civilized and fair, equitable way? It's another strong theme for Aquarius. How do we manage in society, our communities? How do we cooperate? How do we work together for common good and common aims? So these are all issues and themes that are going to come up with Pluto in Aquarius. We look back to Pluto in Aquarius when it was in it last time, which was in the 18th century, to get some idea of some of the themes that might come through. Revolution is one of them. We had the French Revolution and we had the Industrial Revolution. We had the American Revolution under Pluto in Aquarius last time. So the French and American revolutions, this was about the people feeling oppressed in some ways, in different ways, but similar really when you boil it down. Rising up to beat the oppression, to start a new world. Definitely when you come to America, you know, that new world, America was the new world, and the people wanted it to be the way they wanted to be, not the oppression that they'd escaped in Europe. And the oppression of the system and the royalty system, the monarchy system in France was one of the things, one of the many complicated things that led to the French Revolution and the abolishment of the French monarchy there. So that's another strong theme there. Another thing we might want to think about that happened under Pluto and Aquarius last time was that the wealth gap had been growing under the former Pluto in Capricorn, just like it has done this time. But under Pluto in Aquarius in the 18th century, there was a narrowing of that wealth gap, thanks to changes in where the economic systems had been run. These are changes that occurred over long periods of time. So I don't think we could expect things to change overnight. And I think we're lacking the imagination still as humanity to see things done in a different way economically, I believe. Human rights, equality, freedom, freedom of expression, freedom of speech are other key things. And how do we step into our power? How do we find the power to assert our human rights? There's lots of calls in the right wing in the UK to, now we've left the EU, to take us away from the UN Human Rights Convention, so we don't have to, that doesn't apply to us anymore. So that's a really interesting thing where we might see the shadow of Aquarius, because Pluto's sign always shows us the shadow as well as the good stuff. It shows us the for want of a better word, and excuse my language, that crap. It brings the crap and purges the crap and shows us, like, so we can't help but see it. And then it's up to us as humanity with free will that we have to cleanse that crap and get it out in the open. So Pluto in Aquarius brings everything, Pluto will bring everything Aquarius that's a sort of shadow side out into the open. Now, one of the things with Aquarius is very scientific and very technological focused, very future oriented, is always looking to the future. And we'll talk about technology in a second. But it can be, as an air sign, very over intellectualizing. So it can look at the intellectual. So think about the scientific method. The the emotions don't necessarily come into it. It's just like this is the fact, this is the theory plays out, this is what we're going to do. So we could see a bit of over intellectualizing in terms of the scientific stuff. So we need to remember compassion and humanity and the humanitarian. I'm thinking about technology here. So what about AI? AI is a very big thing for Pluto, and Aquarius, we're already seeing that. What power are we going to give it? What power are we going to allow it? How are we going to let it take over our lives? These are big questions. And we might see the shadow of technology, maybe through AI, maybe through other things as well, where we might have become over dependent on technological solutions. Climate crisis, for example. There was a documentary on BBC. If you've got BBC iPlayer, you'll be able to watch it, where the documentary makers travelled all over the world, lots of sort of air miles there, but travelled all over the world to look at all the different methods that scientists all over the world were trying to find solutions for carbon capture. And what was interesting was there were real issues around side effects and scalability. So again, there's going to be a lot of work to find technological answers to the crisis, the climate change crisis, but with unexpected, perhaps, side effects that might cause more problems. You know, in the short term, at least, showing us that we need humanitarianism, compassion, and human behavior, civilized human behavior, to change, as well as just to have amazing technology. The other sort of technology that's very associated with Aquarius is flight and aviations. Uranus moves into Gemini in sort of 2026, but it's going to be in a trine to Pluto, pretty much kind of starting now for the next few years. So you've got more air energy, ideas, beliefs, opinions, all of that kind of thing coming through. It's an allowing aspect, this trine between Pluto in Aquarius and Uranus in Gemini. When it goes into Gemini, actually it goes into Gemini in the summer next year, and then it goes back into Taurus for a bit and then settles, I think, in 2026 in Gemini. And so I'm wondering what are going to be new ideas? What are we going to be thinking of? What's going to be the world mindset, and how is that going to be changed? How is that going to be transformed at the end of this Pluto in Pluto in Aquarius transit? How are we going to be thinking about ourselves and the world differently? How are we going to be looking for, as I say, more bottom-up leadership, the power more in the hands of the people rather than in the few? How are we going to be managing our money differently? How are we going to be pushing for freedom, which will be easier in some countries and some places than other countries? So that's where the sense of some kind of revolution doesn't have to be bloody. It can be, you know, we've had the technological, we're undergoing the technological revolution. If you think back to 1980 and where we are now, more than 40 years later, and I use that, you know, you say 1980 because that was when the Jupiter Saturn cycle went into the air signs for the first time for over 200 years, and then it kind of went back into the earth signs and then settled again into the air signs in 2020. And in that kind of transition period, that 40-year transition period, technology has just advanced exponentially, and we'll start to see there might be some sort of how is the social media, for example, and technology, how has it changed the way we relate to each other, how we communicate? And we'll see some of the downsides of that. We already are seeing some of the downsides of that, that people are just walking down the street with their phones. You know, I've seen groups of people in pubs where normally we would socialise, and they're all kind of on their phones. How do we need to learn to reconnect? You know, you meet people online now rather than you know, the traditional way of you meet someone in a bar, or you meet someone for school or college or work, for example. So we're going to see that civilization change. We're going to see some of the shadow of that and where that's not working for us, and we'll need to make changes there. Community, smaller communities, I think, is probably going to be key. So when we have smaller communities, we work and live and socialize within smaller communities, then we can remake those connections that we probably sorely need. And as I said, Uranus in Gemini really helps with that. Uranus is the modern ruler of Aquarius, of course, so you've got that trine, but you've also got that connection by rulership. So there's a real futuristic focus. It's all about integrity and honesty. Pluto shows you the truth always, whether you want to see it or not, often. It's all about power shifts in all contexts, whether that's in your personal life, if you're touched by this, or whether it's sort of more on the global or community stage. And it brings things up ultimately for, sometimes painfully, Pluto, but for healing and transformation. We're very much going into this air cycle now as well. You know, there's a lot of air going on. We'll have in 2025, we'll have Neptune going into Aries as well. So while Uranus and Pluto are in a supporting trine, we'll also have support from Neptune in Aries. Now, it's a very different energy from the current energy, which is Neptune in Pisces. And it'll be with Saturn as well at some point. There'll be the start of the new Jupiter Saturn, sorry, Saturn Neptune cycle in Aries. You know, that's the start of beginning of thinking about what is this new world order going to be like. It's slower energy. The energy of Pluto and Uranus together in trine is a fast energy. Things happen fast. It's future. We're always looking to the future and we're leaping forward leaps. But the energy of Saturn and Neptune is slower, even in Aries. So there might be some frustration and impatience about not getting where we want to get. This is 2025 and 2026. We're going to have that conjunction. What ambitions and aims for the future we had need to be let go of to think about other ways of doing things. That's going to be another big theme. We also have at the moment as well, which kind of all ties into this, the Jupiter-Saturn square, which is the first square since the conjunction in 2020. And this is also, I've talked about ideas, and also it's about ideas and mindset and how we put those ideas into action. Jupiter-Saturn is basically, Jupiter is about those ideas and potentialities and possibilities. And Saturn is how they become real in the real tangible world, in the restrictions of this 3D matrix tangible world. You know, we might have these grand ideas, but then they have to come into reality. And I think that's a good way of looking at Jupiter and Saturn. So we've got all these ideas. We've got Pluto in Aquarius, ideas, Uranus in Gemini next year, ideas, the Jupiter Saturn square, which is ongoing and it's new, it's coming in, it's going to be with us for a while. Ideas, but it's how we bring those down to earth and what we do with them that's going to count. So there's a few ideas. Now let's talk about this new moon on the 1st of December. New moon in Sagittarius. Before I talk about that, I just want to mention that I recorded a podcast with Ana Isabel about how psychic ability and mediumship ability shows up in the birth chart. We have a discussion. She's a medium herself, and she's very learned and very wise and knowledgeable about the subject. And I've been doing some research into it myself, and also I've been training in psychic mediumship for the last couple of years. So it's a really interesting discussion between the two of us on her YouTube channel, Life Astrologer, and also as a podcast if you prefer podcast. So I'll post the link underneath in the description of this video, so if you want to go and check that out, if it's something that's of interest to you. But let's look at this new moon. So there you can see it's at 9 degrees and 32 minutes of Sagittarius here in the chart, the new moon. It's a conjunction of the sun and moon, and it's the beginning of the new monthly lunar cycle. So it shows in the first house here, you can see the little arrow. It shows in the first house here in this chart. I set it for London. It most likely may well be in a different house for your chart. And the houses we know are the areas of life. And you can see where Sagittarius falls in your chart by getting a free chart from astro.com or alabe.com. And as always, I'll put the little link in the description about the brief themes around each house, which are areas of life. So you can sort of see what area of life, but wherever Sagittarius is in your chart, 932 Sagittarius in your chart, that represents what area of life this new moon will particularly affect. For me, it'll be the 7th house, for example. So it's about relationships. So what about Sagittarius? Well, Sagittarius is full of energy and enthusiasm. It's future oriented. We've already talked about the future orientation of Pluto in Aquarius and Uranus in Gemini. So this new moon, just as Pluto has gone into Aquarius, we get the first new moon of Pluto in Aquarius, and it has this lovely future oriented, enthusiastic and optimistic energy to it. It's the start of something new. It's that adventurous spirit, you know, growth and expansion, some of the high and wisdom. And these are some of the higher themes of Sagittarius. It's also a radically honest sign as well. So where are you being honest with yourself? And where are you not being honest with yourself? You know, Sagittarius is often we say it's about the gift of the gab, good at talking, good at communicating, but there's a radical honesty about Aquarius that sometimes puts its foot in it and says the wrong thing or says the right thing, but it can offend. So where in your life are you sort of, you know, communicating in a way that might be a little bit too honest, or not doing it with subtlety or grace when it's need to be done? But it's visionary as well at best. It's wise, Sagittarius. So during this new moon period, remember, new moons, it's the start of the cycle. It's the dark of the moon. It's time for planning. It's also time for kind of resting as well. Planning and resting, but not necessarily a time for action. So a few days after the new moon, then you can start thinking about getting more active as well. But what's your vision? As I say, it's future oriented, and the fact that Pluto's just going into Aquarius, so part of a new world in Gemini, Uranus soon as well. So we're looking at new things for a new world. So might be time to reflect upon what's your vision for the future, for this new world, for even the new you. Do you have faith in yourself? Do you have faith in the world? There's something quite idealistic about Sagittarius as well. We always think of Sagittarius as being incredibly optimistic and incredibly idealistic even. And when the world or the situations or the career or the relationships or whatever don't live up to that ideal, we can feel a little bit disappointed, a little bit let down when it doesn't work out. So that might be something to contemplate, where you might have been over idealistic. You know, I've just talked about the Jupiter and Saturn dynamic, because they're in square. You can see in this chart, actually, Saturn is right at the bottom of the chart at around about 13 of Pisces there, and it's already in a square with 17 degrees of Jupiter in Gemini there in that chart, in that square. That, you know, the ideas and the possibilities and the potentialities I've just talked about. You've got these grand ideas, you know, what are your grand ideas? You know, Pluto and Aquarius might think about grand ideas, but this new moon on a smaller scale and a more short-term scale, what are your grand ideas? And then when you actually put them into reality and it doesn't work, or there's limits on, and there's real world limits to what you can achieve, or you know, how you can manifest your ideas and potentialities, that can often lead to disappointment. So that's something to remember about Sagittarius. I think we're in danger sometimes of thinking everything about Sagittarius is fantastic and great. And like all the signs, it has its ups and its downs and its light and its shade. You can also see in this chart, you've got Mercury in Sagittarius. It's a bit wide to be conjunct the new moon here, but it's at 20 degrees of Sagittarius. It's actually retrograde, Mercury is, but it's opposite there with quite a strong 3-degree orb from that Jupiter in Gemini I've just talked about. And obviously then you get a T-square with Saturn as well. So all these Saturn things. So it's about Saturn, Jupiter things, but coming into having an optimistic mindset. Right, so it's a mutual reception as well, this Mercury Jupiter. I talked about this in the last video. So Mercury's best sign, one of the best signs for Mercury is Gemini, one of the best signs for Jupiter is Sagittarius, and they're in each of the signs. So there's a strong connection there, and they can kind of self and support each other and balance each other out. So think about this time, what is your mindset? Where do you review the way you think about things? Do you think about things negatively, or do you think about things more Pollyanna? What is the middle ground? What is the sweet spot of, you know, where do you think about things in reality? Because remember, Saturn's there making that square as well. So where do we really think about things that reflect how real life really is? So this is probably a time to do that kind of reflection. What are your opinions? Do your opinions come from? Sagittarius can become very opinionated and very dogmatic and can get stuck in opinions, even in these adaptive and flexible, mutable signs. It can still kind of like get caught in an idea and think, this is right, you know, I'm right and this is right. Okay, so that's another thing to kind of think about, even though, as I said, it's flexible and adaptive energy, and we can use that flexibility and adaptability. And certainly Mercury Sagittarius going retrograde in this new moon chart also shows us perhaps where we need to be in terms of our mindset or our opinions, the way we think, the way we speak, the way we communicate, where we might need to be more flexible and more adaptive to the environment that we're in. There's also something about sort of justice as well, and truth with Sagittarius as well, and also with Aquarius as well, with Pluto and Aquarius as well. So that's another theme. What is the real truth? What is your belief? You know, and what's the difference between truth and belief? These are things to contemplate. Mercury in Sagittarius is interesting, as I say, it goes backwards, so we get a longer period of Mercury in Sagittarius. Normally it's about 28 days, I think. Mercury goes through a sign, so it's a lot longer when it goes backwards. I didn't work out before I started this video the timings for this retrograde. I will do that and post those details underneath us, so that you can see when it's going to go retrograde and at what degree, when it's going to go forward again. But Mercury in Sagittarius, it's interesting. Mercury Sagittarius always reminds me of Cassandra. Cassandra in the myth. She had the gift of prophecy. And I think often with Mercury Sagittarius, we think we've got the gift of prophecy. We think we know everything. Okay, we know everything. But other people don't believe us, and that gets a little bit frustrating. So again, it goes into that mindset of flexibility and being able to adapt as things move and things change. Now, we've also got Mars here in Leo in the 9th house in this particular chart, which is trine the new moon. So that reminds us to take action when we go out, when we start to come out of that new moon phase, and we've done our reflection and we've done our thinking, we've had our rest, we've made a plan, we've assessed or made a new vision for future us and for this future world that's coming in, then we need to take a little bit of action in the right direction, because without action, nothing's going to change. We're not going to manifest everything. And Mars in Leo, it's a fire energy, it's a fixed fire energy. So it has strength. It's about creativity. How can you step into your creativity to move forward? How can you step into your leadership, whether it's just leadership of others or whether it's your self-leadership? It's a generous energy as well. Mars in Leo is a real generous energy, and there's a generous energy in Sagittarius as well. And you want to make yourself, there might be the sense of wanting to make yourself proud of yourself or make other people proud of you, and take pride in what you do. Say this nice trine aspect here. We've also got Venus. You can see Venus there in the second house. It's quite close to Ceres, which is about the harvest, reaping what you sow. It's also about um, nurturing. How do you look after yourself? How do you look after others? And it's very close, obviously, that Pluto and Aquarius we've talked about as well. So where is the power in that? The power in nurturing yourself, the power in, where's the power in your values? And how do your values, your life values, how do they come across in your self-esteem? How do you value yourself? And self-value has a lot to do with self-esteem, and these are Venus themes. And there's a trine there to Uranus in Taurus here, between that a very close trine between Uranus in Taurus and Venus in Capricorn here in this chart. So again, where our values might be challenged or shaken up. And again, I think this ties into it's a very short-living aspect because, of course, Venus moves quite quickly, just like the Mars trine. This new moon is a very short aspect as well. But it maybe starts us on the path of thinking, what are our values? Capricorn is a very traditional sign. Venus in Capricorn, it's very traditional. Where are you holding on to traditional values that no longer serve you, and where you might need to think about values or opinions or ideas that are more kind of moving into the future that we're moving into? So here's just a few little ideas for this new moon, and tying it in really to the bigger picture here. So I wish you a wonderful, wonderful new moon period. I hope you get some insights. I hope you get a chance to rest and reflect. I hope Pluto in Aquarius is both exciting and also kind to you. And as always, I'm sending a lot of love. Thank you so much for watching. And thank you for all the new subscribers as well. Oh, and just to mention before I go as well, if you look on my website, I'm offering a discount on personal consultations at the moment. So have a look at my website and you can get, you can see that and get that discount if you are looking for a personal consultation as the new year comes up, and there's going to be a lot of new energies and new changes and big planets moving signs over the next year or two. So it might be interesting to see how that might affect you. If you're interested, then do get in touch via my website. And again, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for all the people that watched my last video, that you did really well, and for the new subscribers. And please subscribe if you want to and you haven't already. As I said, I do 2 videos a month. You're not going to be bombarded with videos every day. I try to make them interesting and relevant as possible. Thank you so much, with lots of love as always. Bye-bye.